Ukraine just unleashed one of its largest strikes of the war. 87 missiles were fired in a single night, aimed at Russia's most expensive underground command bunker. At first, Moscow believed the fortress was untouchable. But what happened next shook the ground, rattled command, and exposed Russia's greatest weakness. At 2:45 a.m., the skies over Crimea lit up with streaks of fire. Ukraine had launched 87 long-range missiles in a single, coordinated strike aimed at one of Russia's most secret and expensive command bunkers. This facility, buried under reinforced layers of earth and concrete, was estimated to be worth over $9.2 billion. It wasn't just a bunker. It was the nerve center of Russian military operations in southern Ukraine. Inside were secure satellite uplinks, encrypted communication hubs, and hardened war rooms where high-ranking officers directed artillery, air defense, and naval operations. For years, Moscow had sold the illusion that this site was impenetrable. Russian state media often boasted that even a nuclear blast could not crack it, but Ukraine was about to test that claim with overwhelming force. The missiles came from multiple directions, launched from land, air, and sea-based platforms to stretch Russian defenses thin. Each warhead was programmed with precision coordinates, targeting entrances, antenna fields, and suspected ventilation shafts. The night sky over Crimea turned into a terrifying spectacle of glowing contrails as missile after missile rose and descended toward the peninsula. Civilians across Sevastopol, Simferopol, and even as far as Kherson could see the trails cutting across the darkness. Dogs barked, car alarms triggered, and windows rattled before the first blast even landed. Within seconds, the first wave struck surface structures guarding the bunker. Radar dishes, security towers, and hardened garages were torn apart. Explosions sent fireballs skyward, painting the horizon orange. The ground above the underground fortress shook as though hit by an earthquake. The bunker's perimeter defenses were quickly overwhelmed. Its guard towers collapsed, fuel depots ignited, and vehicle convoys parked nearby were reduced to flaming wreckage. But the real purpose of the strike was not the surface, it was to pierce the subterranean fortress itself. Several of the incoming missiles carried deep penetration warheads designed to burrow through reinforced concrete before detonating. When they hit, the impacts echoed like thunder across Crimea. The vibrations traveled through the soil, shaking homes in nearby villages. Russian soldiers on the surface scrambled to respond, but were caught in chaos. Some rushed to man air defenses. Others abandoned their posts, running as fireballs lit up the night around them. For the people of Crimea, the sight was unforgettable. Massive plumes of black smoke rose into the air, glowing red at the base from continuous secondary explosions. Witnesses said it looked like the earth itself had split open. Roads leading toward the bunker filled with emergency vehicles, but many could not approach because debris and craters blocked the way. Even Russian seismic stations, designed to monitor earthquakes, recorded the event as a measurable tremor. The illusion of an untouchable billion-dollar fortress had just cracked wide open. Ukraine had shown that no matter how deep or how expensive, Russia's command centers were not safe. For months leading up to the strike, Ukraine and its allies had been watching the bunker. NATO satellites tracked unusual activity around the complex, showing convoys of blacked-out vehicles moving in and out at odd hours. Some carried encrypted communication gear, others transported senior officers whose movements were normally kept hidden. Ukrainian intelligence intercepted chatter, suggesting that the site was more than just a shelter. It was a central command hub coordinating Russia's southern offensive. Reports indicated that orders for missile launches against Odessa and artillery barrages on Kherson often originated from this very bunker. That made it a prime target. The facility itself was a marvel of hardened engineering. Buried under layers of steel and concrete, reinforced by shock-absorbing tunnels, and protected with redundant power systems, it was designed to survive even direct missile hits. Russia had spent billions modernizing the site, claiming it could withstand any assault short of a nuclear strike. Air defenses around it were stacked in overlapping layers. S-400 systems provided long-range coverage, Panzer S-1S handled close-range threats, and MiG-31 fighter jets were often on standby to intercept incoming missiles. On paper, it was untouchable. That confidence was what Ukraine planned to exploit. The planning phase was meticulous. Ukrainian military analysts mapped the bunker's vulnerabilities using open-source satellite imagery, intercepted radio signals, and drone overflights disguised as civilian flights. Analysts spotted disguised ventilation shafts, disguised antenna fields, and concealed vehicle entrances carved into the hillsides. These were weak points. If destroyed, they could suffocate the bunker, cut its communications, or trap its personnel underground. A strategy was drawn up. Overwhelm the defenses with sheer volume, then drive precision warheads into those vulnerabilities. Allied intelligence played a key role. U.S. surveillance aircraft operating in international airspace collected electronic signals to measure radar frequencies and missile launch delays. European satellites provided heat maps of nightly activity. Even commercial imagery from private companies showed supply convoys delivering food, ammunition, and encrypted gear to the site. By late September, the picture was clear. The command bunker was critical, active, and overconfident in its defenses. Ukraine's generals decided on an unprecedented tactic: mass saturation. Instead of sending a small wave of missiles that could be intercepted, they would fire nearly 90 at once. Storm Shadow cruise missiles, ATAC-EMS tactical ballistic missiles, and domestically produced Grim-2 systems would be launched together. Some would be decoys, some would strike secondary targets like guard barracks and radar dishes, but the majority were aimed at the heart of the fortress. The logic was simple: overwhelm the defenses until they broke. Inside the bunker, Russian officers carried on as usual in the weeks leading up to the attack. They reviewed maps, issued orders, and assumed their billion-dollar fortress made them untouchable. But above them, Ukraine's planners were aligning every piece: satellites, drones, radar jammers, and missiles, for one of the most ambitious strikes of the entire war. At exactly 2:45 a.m., the silence of Crimea's night sky was broken by the roar of multiple missile launches. Ukrainian forces unleashed their heaviest volley of the war. 87 long-range missiles fired in near-simultaneous waves. From mobile launchers deep inside Ukraine, ATAC-EMS tactical missiles shot upward with trails of fire. From hidden air bases, storm shadows screamed low across treetops, hugging the terrain to avoid radar. Meanwhile, domestically produced Grim-2 missiles arced high, diving steeply toward their targets. It was a coordinated symphony of destruction designed to overwhelm every layer of Russian defenses. Russian radar operators near Sevastopol and Jankoy were the first to notice the barrage. Screens lit up with dozens of blips, each representing an inbound missile. Panic set in almost immediately. Alarms blared as S-400 operators rushed to lock onto targets. Panzer S-1 units fired volleys of interceptor missiles and auto-cannon bursts into the night. On comms, voices shouted over each other. Too many targets! It was clear that the defenses were saturated. Interceptors managed to down several missiles, but for every one destroyed, 2 more slipped through the gaps. The first wave slammed into surface-level installations. Explosions tore apart radar dishes, antenna towers, and guard barracks. Russian soldiers scrambled as fireballs engulfed fuel depots and vehicle garages above ground. Then the heavier warheads arrived, Storm Shadows, equipped with penetrating charges aimed directly for the reinforced entrances of the bunker. One struck the main blast door, blasting concrete and steel into shards. Another hit the secondary entrance carved into the hillside, collapsing the tunnel in a thunderous cave-in. The Grim-2 missiles, carrying massive, high-explosive payloads, struck deeper targets. One slammed into a ventilation hub, igniting flames that poured smoke directly into the underground complex. Another detonated on the roof of the command center, collapsing structural supports and triggering a chain of secondary explosions. Ammunition stored nearby ignited, creating shockwaves that reverberated like rolling thunder. Seismic sensors across southern Ukraine recorded the strike as if it were a natural earthquake. Inside the bunker, chaos erupted. Lights flickered and died as power conduits were destroyed. Officers abandoned command consoles, their encrypted uplinks to Moscow severed. Emergency systems kicked in, but smoke and fire spread rapidly through ventilation shafts. Some sections collapsed entirely, trapping personnel underground. Communications across the southern front went silent for minutes at a time, a gap that proved costly as Ukrainian artillery exploited the confusion. From above, satellite imagery captured the unfolding disaster. Massive fireballs lit up the terrain. Smoke plumes rose thousands of feet into the air, drifting toward the Black Sea. Craters dozens of meters wide scarred the surface. Even Russian civilians living miles away reported deafening booms, shattered windows, and glowing skies that turned night into day. What was supposed to be an impregnable fortress had been torn open in less than 20 minutes. For Russia, the unthinkable had just happened. Billions spent on defenses had failed to stop a storm of missiles. And for Ukraine, it was proof that even the most secure command post could be reduced to rubble with enough precision and persistence. By dawn, the scale of destruction was undeniable. The Russian command bunker, once hailed as an untouchable nerve center, was left in ruins. Over 70% of the complex was annihilated. Communication arrays melted, reinforced doors blasted apart, ventilation shafts caved in, and underground tunnels filled with fire and smoke. Emergency rescue teams rushed to the site, but they were met with smoldering wreckage, collapsing ceilings, and blocked access points. Reports from Ukrainian intelligence suggested that several high-ranking officers were either killed or injured during the strike, leaving gaps in leadership across southern operations. Frontline Russian units immediately felt the shockwave of the attack. In Kherson and Zaporizhzhia, artillery units reported silence from higher command. Orders that normally flowed through encrypted bunker channels never arrived. Coordination between brigades collapsed, forcing local commanders to act blindly without guidance. For Ukraine, this was the moment they had prepared for. Within hours of the strike, Ukrainian artillery and drones launched precision attacks on Russian supply depots, convoys, and frontline artillery. Without central coordination, Russia's responses were fragmented and slow, giving Ukraine breathing room to push forward. International observers compared the strike to the most decisive moments of modern warfare, a decapitation strike aimed not just at equipment, but at leadership itself. Analysts noted that destroying a $9.2 billion facility with relatively low-cost missiles exposed a massive imbalance in the war. Billions in Russian investment could be undone in minutes by Ukrainian ingenuity and Western-supplied precision systems. It wasn't just physical damage, it was psychological. Russian commanders, once confident in their underground fortress, now realized nowhere was truly safe. Politically, the blowback in Moscow was severe. State media attempted to downplay the strike, calling it a minor fire, but satellite images and independent verification spread globally within hours. Social media lit up with footage of towering smoke plumes and glowing skies over Crimea. Citizens demanded answers. How could such an expensive and supposedly secure bunker be destroyed in one night? The Kremlin faced not just military losses, but also growing doubts about its ability to protect its own infrastructure. Economically, the strike carried a staggering price tag. Rebuilding such a hardened facility under sanctions would be nearly impossible. Specialized alloys, electronics, and communication equipment required for reconstruction are largely inaccessible to Russia due to international restrictions. Western experts estimated it would take years, not months, to rebuild even partial capabilities. In the meantime, Russia's southern front would operate with reduced coordination, a vulnerability Ukraine was quick to exploit. For Ukraine, the message was clear and brutal. Nowhere in occupied territory is safe. From refineries to airfields, from supply depots to command bunkers, every high-value target is vulnerable. With precision strikes, electronic warfare, and overwhelming salvos, even a fortress buried under concrete and steel can collapse. For Russia's generals, the strike was more than an attack. It was a warning carved into the earth. If Ukraine can see it, Ukraine can strike it. And if Ukraine strikes, it will burn.